with you a link that has everything that I'm going to share with you today, just in the chat. So that's just in there now. And I'm going to share the screen so you can sit back, relax, grab your cuppa. Thanks, Howard. So what I've done is I have prepared what's called a story map. So a story map is a long scrolling web page that has lots of information in here, and it's a nice way to present your kōrero. We're going to go through lots of different things there, but that link's on the chat, so you feel free to have a tutu as well if you wish. There's a lot of sites, links, some embedded things that I wanted just to show you how you could not only find the data, but what can you do with it when you do have it. And maybe the first thing I'm going to start with is just describe the story map. It's not intended as a story to be read from top to bottom, but it's a place where I've just put a whole lot of links that I think are going to be really helpful for you, particularly on this weekend. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy and find something useful in there. So you can see here from already, there is a story map is how you present some text, some video, and some maps. So let's have a look at this first map. So this is how you can present your own data to your own whānau, hapū, a trust, or to the public. So you can see here there's a couple of examples on here that I've just put in here near to home, so I'm usually out here in Petone. And you can see as I scroll through, these examples become available and the map moves to where they are. And I shared this one with Tanya, and Tanya put a couple in there, up in the north, and Tamaki Makaurau. So just to make this session a bit interactive, what I'd like to do is invite you to add your own, just one pin and maybe a photo and a little kōrero about something, a location that is near and dear to you in your rohi. And I'm going to put this link on the chat as well. And we'll just go through this together. So if you wanted to capture your own data, in my opinion, the easiest way is to enable others to be able to capture the data with you. And so with this form here, you can see we can add name of a site, and this will come up as that heading just in our story over here. So this is the heading. And the kōrero in here will pop up just here. So for those of you who are interested, please do feel free during the session to add your own map pin and photo. So add a photo just here, just grab one off the, let's do one together. Name the site Hauraki. This is where we find numerous flounder. What's Māori for flounder? Probably in my picture here. I think I've got here. Here we go. It's my flounder. Okay, and I can add more photos if you want to. Now I'm going to find a place. So before I can put this pin, I've got to zoom way down. So Hauraki, and I do a search, and I'm just going to say that, okay, this one is here, just a random location. Now in the form, and there's further reference to this in the story map, let's say you wanted to do some cultural health assessments. So there's a way that you can structure questionnaire, like what kind of mahinga kai species are present. Or, now I've picked, of course, a saltwater fish, and we're doing freshwater. Or whatever you might want to focus in your monitoring on. And there's also some considerations and observations. So just an example of how you could prepare a form for your own monitoring activities. And now my entry will appear on the story map. So if I refresh my story map, it should be there now. Scroll down a bit, and all going well, here is my flounder, and when I click on it, it zooms down to that location. So here would be my kōrero, my heading. So feel free to add your own if you want to just represent on the map. And that data will get deleted in a couple of weeks. So I picked that one first because it's not really data, but it is probably something that almost everyone will want to do, is to capture their own map-based data. And so you can use this type of tool, and that one's called Survey 123. But there is also a alternative to Survey 123, which is part of the ArcGIS platform, called Kobo Toolbox, and I've used that a lot. And I have got a copy of that cultural assessment built in Kobo Toolbox that I'm happy to share as well. I'm sorry, I've put the text there, but I haven't put the link, but happy to share that. So another way that you can look at change over time, particularly in relation to freshwater, is using aerial photography. And so this is using a couple of images before and after post-cyclone Gabriel. So if we wanted to look at change at a very detailed level for our awa, then we can find, and in services like the ones from Toolkits Whenua and from others, they will provide a copy of an image, and you can also get this out of Google Earth desktop. And you can, on the right-hand side, you can overlay this with perhaps some imagery from a later stage. And then you can see during that Cyclone Gabriel, just after, you can see the changes that have occurred. And you can have this for as many different places as you want, many different imagery sources as you can find. And we've done a couple of these wānanga previously, and that's available now on YouTube. And it's also at the very bottom of the story map, where you can find those data sources and where they're from, where to get them. And also with imagery, you don't necessarily need to download them. So you can have a tutu with that one. You can pan and move and zoom the map there. I just put one location just to flag, hey. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes. So we're talking about freshwater map data today. And it is actually probably one of the most difficult and challenging areas or themes within GIS mapping in Aotearoa at the moment, in my opinion. So in the story map, there are lots of different references to other data sets, but I thought for those of you who are just new to GIS, I'll put something together that you can access, and I'll put this in the chat too. Oh, actually, did everybody get that link, or did I just checking everyone? Here's the link to this. This is just a bit of a example interactive map viewer that I've pulled in a few data layers that you can access and have a tutu with, and you cannot break this, so you can just go crazy. This allows you to zoom in and have a tutu with all kinds of data sets, and I'll show you how it works. So let's say I'm just going to come down here somewhere around randomly in Taranaki, not looking for Punihau at all. Over on the left here, this is the table of contents, or the legend, and this shows you what layers are in this map already. Down here a bit, this one that looks like three things on top, this one lets you turn layers on and off. So I've put this group of iwi Māori context. So that, that form that we just looked at, well, there also are the results of that form. So we can use it in more than one place. Also in here are some of the layers, marae, land blocks, areas of interest, which I've got turned off at the moment. And then first bit here, we really get into some freshwater stuff, some of the other layers. So we've got lakes turned on. I've got some data called River Environments Classification Number 2 layer, New Zealand local river names, and that's a named data set. I've got that on, and I've also got catchments turned on. So see this big blobby thing here? This is a data set some years ago I had a bit of a tutu with, and I took some work that Whenua and I think MFE had done. They had a sea draining catchments data set. And so what I did is I smoothed them and went through and named them. And so there's about 2,400. Just checking, kia ora, Robert. I just went through and I named them all as best possible. So it's important to remember that with a catchment, there are often more than, there's more than one name for each catchment. For example, you might have different scales of catchments as well. Now, just click on there, cool. So this, this particular catchment layer is all of the sea draining catchments, and it just treats it as one catchment. So for example, with Waikato, it's a very large catchment and it just treats it as one, but within there are numerous sub-catchments as well, of course. So over on the left here, there's some kind of the key data sets. So that's, if I switch that off, won't make any difference on your side because this is just read only, but you can do this and have it to do as well. Let's have a look at what else do we have here. Got some layers here from MFE. So lake water quality, trophic index modeled between 2016 and 2020. So this was another available data set. And if I zoom out a bit here, we can see some data points coming up. And of course, some of the data with freshwater, because most freshwater is either a big round lake or pond, or a very thin line or a slightly thicker line where you've got like a Waikato awa. But if we come down here, we can see there's some data associated with this wetland just here. So if I click on this, it tells me all kinds of information, and a lot of it is very scientific in nature. But also, the one thing I wanted to recognize was that everyone has got different interests in freshwater. Like some will be monitoring, some will be, depending on what part of the motu you're living in. So unfortunately, there's no sort of single place that you can get all of this data that you might want in a kind of a map kind of format like this. But I'm going to show you some others here as well. So you can have a tutu through this. There's also, for example, some niwa sourced information, and this is where that river environments classification comes from. They've got the original watersheds as well. So feel free to have a look and have a tutu through here. There's one data set in the next group down, which if I just close that, put this one on, freshwater fish database. So there wasn't, you can download this data from Whenua, but there wasn't any particular place that had made it available for everyone to see online. So I've rehosted it and made it available in this map. So if we come out and just find a different place, Taumarunui, for example, Keith, somewhere about here. Can't tell without the names on, but anyway. So if we hover over this point, here we can see coda, its latitude, longitude, a little bit of information about that, who made the data observation, and the date will be in there as well. So the purpose of this map here is just to give you a taste of what is possible to pull all kinds of different layers in, and you can turn them all on at once if you want to, but it'll probably just slow down, and at some point it'll crash in your browser, but that's okay. You just refresh it, it'll start up again. So there's some in there for fish, and also there are two, in terms of freshwater, in terms of GIS data layers. To my mind, there are two big ones. One is from Whenua called the River Environment Classification, and now there's version number 2, which we've got in here. And then the second data set is from Whenua LINS. And so they have got the topographic maps, these maps here that you will have seen, tramping maps, that's just down the bottom right there. You can turn on this data just here, and I've turned them all off, so you just have to put them on one at a time so you can see what you're looking at. But here, for example, is river name polygons and river name lines. So you can see those blue lines. Now, where this data comes from is from these topographic maps. It's the same data as what's in those tramping maps that people might use to go hunting with. They also use for search and rescue, things like that. So you can see this data is on there now as well, and we can keep turning on more data sets, such as historical PAR. I mean, it's not a water feature, but I thought it'd be a good data set just to have on there. And you can see it highlights one there. There's also soak holes. So for those of you looking, no, the next one down, puna, spring points. So Keith, I know you're keen on puna, soak hole points, and waterfall points, and so on and so on, canals, lagoons, lakes, ponds, swamps, and so on. So have a tutu. This gives you an example of where you might want to head towards, and I know many of you use desktop GIS, and we're going to now move into where to find some of these data sets. I'll just check in on the chat there. Now, just to let you know, yep, this is being recorded and we'll make it available on the Toitū Whenua YouTube. I'll come back to a couple of those patai there. Oh, the tributaries. Holden's got a question there on tributaries. Yeah. So here's some of the challenges. So the LINS data that you can see on screen at the moment doesn't have a stream order. So an order is the thickness of the awa. So for example, order 1 is the small initial tributary, the small awa. I call it, cheekily, I go, one tributary plus another tributary, you have a level 2 order stream. 2 order streams, or 1 order 2 plus another order 1 gives you an order 3. And so on, until you get to an awa the size of Waikato, for example, is I think an 8 or a 9. But just up here again, if I just turn those off, what Holden was asking about here is just in here, catchments and awa. We're looking at this one, and I just may need to check I got that turned on again. I want this one here. Turn those back on. So there's a couple of data sets here. There is the catchments, and then you can see some of these higher order awa where more than one tributary comes in. The order number is higher, so they're represented with a thicker number on the map, as you'd kind of expect. That's what I would find useful is if I see a thick line, it means to me, okay, it's further downstream and it has multiple small areas into it. And I just figured out this hover over function that I turned on is kind of annoying, so I might turn it off after this hui just so it's more simple to use. Okay, so there's something to have a tutu with. There are some bookmarks in there. You can change the base map. You can do some measurement up the top right here. You can click this to change the base map. And there's also some other base maps in this 4-box grid over here. So feel free to have a go, but just pull some of the data sets. We're going to have a look at where you find them into one map. And if anybody wants a copy of it, there's a link in the chat here, in the story map, this one here, which will open the basic map. And for those of you, you know how to use ArcGIS, you can save it to your own account. So that's, let's just click away that. So that's that map that you've just seen. Let's get into some data. So where do we find these data sets? There are lots of different places where you can get them from. What I'll do is I'm trying to keep an eye on the time because I want to finish up maybe in 15 minutes or so, just so we can have some time to have a look at some census, latest census data, as well as any pātau that you might have as well. Data.gov. This is the one place where all of the government agencies and all of the regional councils put their freshwater data, as well as other data as well. And what you can see here is these little icons down the bottom here are indicating to me as a GIS person that there are lots of different file formats that I can access. And I can download them. But these are, none of these links here are for the downloadable data. It's just like an index card. If you imagine an old school library from 1980s and you had these cards that you used to search through, well, this is just the card. You have to then go and find the data. So if we just pick the first one that really catches my attention, let's see. We'll just keep scrolling. What have we got here? These are all freshwater pests. I didn't really want to look at any of those. Still pests. Freshwater eel statistical areas from MPI, maintained by a fisheries group, defined in catchments, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's have a look at this. So this is still the index card. And if I want to go and get the data, then I click on this and it gives me a link. I click on the link. And finally, we walk to the shelves and now we're looking at the book that is the data set. It may take a moment to load. But that gives you the idea. So here's that data set. And sometimes it takes a little while for these things to load up. Tell you the extent, and you can zoom in, have a look. And so in some of our other Ngā Poutama Matawhenua sessions, we've described through the process of taking this data and adding it to your own map, or in this case, you can download it. For those of you using QGIS or desktop, you just click download there and get a copy of the data for yourself. That's not particularly cool data. It's just a boundary box. So that's dataset.gov. You can sort by, you can filter by different agencies. There's some really good data from Whenua that we're going to come and have a look at after this part. Councils, all of these different organizations, all of their GIS data is typically compatible with each other. Some of it you do have to download and add to your own desktop first, but much of it, like you can see in that example map, in this one, you can add it into your online maps for free. You can do that for free, and also they will host it. You can access their data that they've hosted, so you don't have to pay any money to anyone to store the data for you. So there's one source. Another couple of sources, there's MFE have a data service. Just click on this one. And so MFE, Manaki Whenua, Linker Research, Toi Tū Whenua Lins, Stats NZ, Tataranga Aotearoa, probably someone else I've forgotten. They all use this same tool. It's a software called, by a company called Coordinates, and it allows you to download data sets. So for example, Holden, I know you're keen on QGIS, but you're going to want the data set in your hand on your desktop. So for those seed draining catchments, the ones you can see here, these big catchment areas, this is the original data source, and you can add it to your map here. So you can see there, Waikato is a very large oa. And then you can just download, export it into whatever format you might want. There's also, you get into things like projections and other things as well. So the alternative to downloading it is using a tool like this one, part of the Esri suite called just the map viewer. And there's a link just under that tool in the story map. And you can, often those organizations will host that data for you. So you can just add it straight into your map live. So you don't have to download it, store it, back it up, and all the other kind of processes that you have to do to look after data, particularly if your laptop gets damaged or whatever. You don't have to necessarily store anything. So in terms of that data, what is hosted and available to add into those kind of web maps, here is a link that gives you a view into all of the data that MFE maps, for example, have got available and stored ready for you to use. So there's all kinds of stuff in here. There's pre-human wetland estimate extent, there's extreme coastal flooding, there'll be some sea level rise, low slope land, in terms of stock exclusion. There's some river quality, so let's have a look at this one. Here's an example of one of those types of river quality data sets. If I click on this, open a map viewer, here's just one data set, for example, added into the map viewer. And when we come down here, we can find some information about it. If we click on this little link just here under information, it'll open up a new page. And so this is a hosted online layer that allows us to add into the map viewer. And they've got some beautiful non-existent metadata. So there's nothing much in here. But if you do a Google search for this, I'm sure you'll find further information about it. But I'm very happy that they have actually just hosted this data for us, because it saves me having to download it, saves me having to pay to store it online in some system so that I can share it with other people. Because typically my workflows have changed quite a bit from early in my career. I'd download everything, I put it into a desktop, and then I'd publish a map. But now, as you'll see with this hui, all of the stuff that I do is online hosted because I want to share it with someone else for the majority of the time. So then I can click on this, back to this data set. I can click on this and I can find some information here. So that I've also focused on national coverage data sets in this hui, because you can see, I know everyone is from all over the motu, and you'll want to zoom. First thing you'll want to do is zoom down to home and have a look and see, what does it say about the awa nearest to you. So that's just an example of how you can access this data. It's kind of annoying how you have to have one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, but that's just unfortunately the nature of data and GIS, and partly why I kind of had that there. So I can add any of these data sets into that map, or you can as well if you want to. There's quite a few here, so I'm going to skip a couple, but there's one here that I know Holden Hohai is very keen on. The National Environmental Data Centre, if I just go back one step. So all of the environmental data of Aotearoa in one place, and all different categories. And so I just brought it straight into this freshwater category. And so this is, again, that kind of idea of an index card. It's not the data itself, but it will point you to where the data is. Just give me 1 second, folks. I'll just check in on our checking on there. Peter had a question. Yes, you can add in. You could certainly try adding it in. Anyway, yeah. I didn't enable the web URL form part of the form, but that's easily added in. Let's see, just checking through. There are lots of parts out there. Sorry, fun. I'll need to come back to those ones. One last one there. Tapuika, Iwi Authority, limitations of coordinates as opposed to desktop app. So there's a couple of key things here. I focus on cloud hosted because I'm wanting to share it with others. But as you know, with sovereignty, data sovereignty, there's all kinds of complications in there. So keep in mind that most of the data you're seeing today is already open, publicly available. So if you have your own data that you're wanting to keep within a sovereign system, that can add some complications, but generally with a desktop GIS, the focus there is either publishing to a cloud service, like Holden was describing just earlier before the session about publishing to, I think it was GitHub, Holden. The same with ArcGIS Desktop, you can publish to ArcGIS Online. But the main focus with desktop is doing analysis and viewing it on your machine. It has some constraints in that it's very difficult then to sometimes share data with others because you have to pay for cloud hosting somewhere. But this is why I go hunting for data sets that are already sourced and available online, so I don't have to download and store them. But when you do download and store them, you can then do whatever you want with them. Change the colors, do further analysis, overlays, all kinds of interesting things. So this site has, I'm just seeing what's the one. You go through these and you think, oh yeah, we'll do that one, and then you forget which one that was. But you see there's a lot of fish passage assessment tool. Let's have a look at this one. So again, it's like an index card. Now it takes me to that site. Fish passage assessment tool, this one here. And this data, I'm pretty sure, is also in this web map viewer as one of those layers. Let's come back to it here. So fish passage assessment tool, it's giving you all kinds of information about the constraints and conditions on each of those awa. So if we click on choose the structure types to display, click on some things here, you can see there's some points and things popping up. It looks a bit messy. Let's zoom in a bit. As with all of these tools, it takes a little bit of time to get to know and understand what they're useful for or what the constraints of using them are. But in this case, if I was interested in fish passage, then this is a good example of where Whenua have provided this tool so I can go in there and I can do these kinds of things with no GIS knowledge. If you are a GIS person, then it gets harder for you because then you have to go down things like download. Here, for example, you can download, and if it's this one, I think it is, you just download the whole lot like this. Don't specify anything. So Holden, that's the one you want, bro. Just download, get the whole lot. Don't worry about checking any of these fields unless you only want data for a very small area, which most people probably do, but it's going to take a while by the looks of it. But yeah, it'll download. I think it comes as a CSV. And then you can open it. You can look at a CSV in Excel, or you can, here it goes. Yeah, there we go. So here's an example of that difference between desktop and hosted. So we can view it on this map, but they don't give me a link that I can add it to my own web map. So if I wanted to overlay it with my own data, just for my own little area, my own rohi, then I need to download it, take the data I want, and put it into either my own GIS system, my own desktop, or upload it to my own server. So what I did maybe last night is I took this and what's going on here? And I went, okay, I'll upload this and then add it to the map. And also knowing that other people using the GIS systems can add it to their map as well. So this is the data itself. If we have a quick look at the top here, what is it telling us? Here's the date recorded, the latitude, longitude, the, what else is here? Some other entered various data data attributes, date that's entered and things. New Zealand River Segment. What's this organisation? Don't know what that is. Flow, no flow, low tidal. So you can see there's lots of different types here. And if I was interested in no flow lakes or water or tidal flow, then I could use this kind of as an indicator. I could use it to pull out just those, query out those data sets, those pieces of this data set. Assets, culverts, who owns it, what type it is, made of concrete, all this kind of really fascinating info. You only probably want the 20 or 50 records that are in your rohi, but those are available in that web map viewer as an example. So what I did with that CSV, I took it, I uploaded it to my ArcGIS Online, and I went, added some symbology, and then I made it public so that anyone else who wants to add it to their maps can add it in there as well. So that was the freshwater environment data setter. There's heaps of these kind of sites. I'm just thinking there's Lawa as well. Many of you will have heard of Lawa, and it's fairly quite straightforward to use. You pick on the theme and it shows you some data on the side here. I did have a look to see if I could download some data, but I couldn't easily find where to download it. And I think most of it is point-based data as well, like you can see here. But it's a good site to have a look through, and it's very detailed. It comes from places like the regional councils. If we click on one of these, for example, it's quite a neat site to go through. You can find all kinds of information, but I'm looking for GIS data sets, but I want those I want to make those points in my own map. And let's just see if I can spot where to download it here. Typically, you'd find these at the bottom. I know I looked up here as well. There's an explore data, but I want to download data. So I kind of get, me personally, I get to Lawa and I get a bit frustrated because, yeah, it's cool information, but I want to overlay it with my own observations for the places that are of interest to me, and to be able to share it as part of a story. And this data is not easily grabbable for me. So there is I don't want to speak anything bad of Lawa, not at all. It's a massively beautiful site, but in terms of data, I find it difficult to get data from it. It's useful to view data, and I think many of you will probably find it really useful. So there's also Ngā have some really useful sites there for data sets as well. I'm just going to skip over a couple here just for time. There's that fish data, fish passage assessment tool. There's also a really neat river maps app. For me, the challenge is, again, I can view it here, but I really want to grab the data, and I couldn't see easily how to grab it. But this is a really good site if you want to have a look at your own awa. So if we come down here, we want a single catchment, for example. Select variable type. You can go hydrology, sediment load, water quality, invertebrate communities, fish habitat, bird habitat, and all kinds of other variables. And if I click on that, no, sediment load, map the selected variable. It's going to make me a cool map, but I think it's going to make me a cool map. Here we go. Sediment load, and then if I click on one of these, it's probably going to give me some information. Class categories. So I'm going to have to read into the detail to figure out what this categories are. It looks like they're just down here. But another useful web map to go and have a look at, but not the same as getting the data from Ngā, from LINS, from MFE, and downloading it into my own hard drive. Urban water runoff was another system I found there. DOC has a whole bunch of data. Manaki Whenua has a whole bunch of data. There was a really neat flood pics map where you can have a look at photographs taken during floods over time. There's an article that I did a couple of years ago in Te Reo Te Repo. If you come onto this one, it's all about some mapping wetlands. This was a really cool book put out by Ngā Whenua and friends. So just down here, the last one. So GIS mapping tools for wetland projects. And if we open that one up, go through all kinds of data sets that are of interest, different tools that could be used, how GIS works, points, lines, polygons, and imagery. There's a really neat tool from Google, My Maps, nice, easy, simple one. RetroLens, where you can get historical photos and things. Oh, that won't go away. Anyway, there's an article there, and also story maps. So I wanted to show you a couple more of these. Once you've got this data, once you've figured out what tool you want to use, there are some neat story maps just here, and I think this was one. I'm not sure where I'd come across this one. Kelly Ratana. So this is the same tool what I've used to, you can almost see it's almost identical here, with a map based on a survey form or some data set that Kelly has used. And some kōrero that goes with it as well. Some video, added a quote, a couple of other images, and it's just a very short story map. But if you go to storymaps.arcgis.com, just here like this, you can sign up and get what is called a public account, and you can create your own ones for free. They're stored by Esri for you, and there's a couple of functions that are missing, but wouldn't worry about those. There's a couple of other story maps here. There's one here that I made a couple of years ago that's got some data sets, links directly to data sets. So Holden, this one's going to be helpful if you wanted to grab data. So this will take you straight to, for example, current wetland estate, if that link still works. Go straight to MFE, straight to where the data is, and you can grab it, download it, put it into your own GIS tool. So kind of a different workflow there than viewing it online. And yeah, there's a couple of other story maps there that I thought would be quite neat to have a look through, but just a bit short on time. So I'm going to pause here and hand over to Tania, who's going to give us a quick update on the census data for GIS users. So I hand over to you, Tania. I'm just going to stop sharing. And while you're showing us some stuff, I'm just going to go through a few of those pātai.
Kia ora, Duane. Kia ora koutou, ko Tania tōku ingoa, ko ngā puhi aho, kei te noho o ki Tāmaki Makaurau. I'm just going to quickly run through some of the census, geospatial census data that's come out from that first release, and hopefully some of it will be quite useful. So I'll quickly just first go over the timeline. So as you all know, we've had our first data release, and with that data release, we've also released some geospatial data, and that includes some web maps, as well as your geospatial files. And that's included Māori descent as well. And later on in the year, we are looking at doing a second data release. So the current release is only at the regional council and territorial authority or a local board level. However, in our October data release, and it'll be the 3rd of October one, We'll also be releasing data at the statistical area 2 level, which probably will be a bit more useful. And it'll be SA2 data with the current data we have released, so the population change, Māori descent, ethnic group change, and age group change. And as well as, sorry, I know that there's a second set of data. We'll also be releasing the dwellings data for regional council, territorial authority, and statistical area 2. So yeah, there'll be a second release kind of later on in the year. Right, so the current release. So if you're trying to find the data from the 2023 census page, there is this section here where we've got the 2023 census maps and data, and it goes to our Stats NZ hub, but this is essentially sitting on GIS Online, and we've created a set of maps which display some of the data which might be interesting and useful. So again, it's at that regional council and TA level. And just go there, and yeah, it gives you a bit of info on the Māori descent census, usually resident population change between census years. So it can be very useful to have a quick snapshot or look at the data. However, probably a lot of you want to actually be able to access the data directly. So what we have is we also have the data available here. So we do have data available via ArcGIS Online or the 2023 Census Maps and Data webpage. And we also have census data available on Data Finder as well. So with the census data sitting here, you can access it this way. However, I think with the raw data, I would recommend downloading it from Data Finder. So with the current census, and find it. Can be downloaded from Data Finder. And if I just add, so I'm interested in the Māori descent population change data by regional council. I can edit here, and I can also export it from here. So we've got the data available in different file formats for you to download. So shapefile, geodatabase. So if you want to use feature class, and things like geopackage if you're using QGIS. So you can download the geospatial data files from here, from Data Finder, However, if you're wanting to more use services or APIs, you can also access these from here. So we also have WFS and spatial query APIs. So they can also be accessed from here. And what else do we have? So we have Data Finder, where you can download those spatial files, as well as the lookup tables. And we also have those interactive maps. And if you're going from Statless as well, you can also access this 2023 census maps and data page. And the census data has also been released on Te Whata. So this can be really, really helpful if you are looking for that census data and also just want to have a quick look at some of the information through here. So yep, they've got a great little map and some kind of interactive charts and stuff like that. And they have also information on the methodology and links to that. So yeah, it can be really useful if you're just wanting to have a quick look at changes in population of Māori descent and other data that has been released as well. How am I doing for time? And the last thing I wanted to quickly show you all is that the census geospatial data has also been released on the Living Atlas. So if you are using ArcGIS Online to build your map, you can actually load the layers into your map. So they're like the map that Duane was showing before. So if you go, hopefully this turns up. So yeah, so all of that information, census population change, Māori descent population change by TALB and region, it can be found here if you prefer to access data from the Living Atlas. So yeah, it's a very, very quick run through of those data sources from that first release. And kind of later on in the year, further on, we're hoping to do a more in-depth one once that SA2 data has been released.